just about to go live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of Rendezvous with Ansar Saqib on CxO Global TV. CxO Global Forum is a knowledge-sharing platform for all C-levels across the globe. We take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy with our league of key thought leaders who are not only domain experts, but those who have made a considerable amount of difference in the field that they're working in. Today as well, we've got a very special guest with us. He is one of the pioneers in telcos and connectivity in Pakistan, I would say. I'm very inspired by him. I'm sure you all would love to hear more from him as well. Welcome, Taimur, to the show. Mr. Taimur Nawaz is the VP Commercial at Transworld. Thank you for joining us, Taimur.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Taimur, so, there are a lot of people who know about your professional profile and, your LinkedIn, mashallah, speaks volumes. I know you've been around the world in serving quite a few international companies and have made a considerable mark for yourself. However, what I would like to know is, where did this journey begin? Where did you grow up? What courses you studied? How did you end up becoming a VP of such a big brand?
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunity. Yeah, so I would actually start from it's a very, I think, interesting question, because where I am, I would not call it an accident, to be honest, but I had a different direction all my life than where I am. But alhamdulillah, I belong to a military background. So my father was in army, and then he was in foreign office for a couple of years. So I've been actually making a lot of trips within Pakistan, right? So in different garrisons across Pakistan. So I can actually tell you, I can recall around 12 to 13 schools that I actually switched during my first 10 years of education, right? Because we've been actually moving from one military garrison to another one. It was a great experience because I made great friends. I'm still in touch with them. So that's how it actually all began, from the military background. In terms of my education, to be honest, or as I said, I was never intended to become an engineer. I was very inspired by kind of art. Still, interiors and art is really very dear to me. But I mean, it's whether you call it a peer pressure or my parents' pressure, I ended up actually doing engineering. So I did my engineering from NUST with telecom majors, and then later on I did my MBA from LUMS. I would say I was not the kind of a person who would actually do a hardcore engineering job, right? So I ended up actually becoming more of a techno-commercial guy. So from those, many schools that I switched all my life because my father was in army. But then I think for the past 2 decades, more than 2 decades, I've been actually based in Islamabad. And obviously, I went abroad for work also during that period. But yes, so telecom majors from engineering from NUST, and then I did my MBA with majors in concentration in marketing from LUMS. Or in terms of my career, agar aap dekhen, to it has been all the way within the telco. Because the time frame that I actually entered in the market as part of the workforce, it was a booming industry, right? So I started my career back in '99 when I joined Alcatel. It used to be Alcatel, the French company, and then it became Alcatel-Lucent later on. The American stakes came in. But that's how I actually began in Islamabad. But then I made a very well-informed decision that I realized that I cannot work in a very kind of hardcore engineering setting, right? So I ended up actually in LUMS for my MBA. And thereon, my whole career within telco space has been in a commercial role. Business development, product development, but it was primarily within the commercial, so to speak. During this phase, I would call it, so when I actually, my first job after Alcatel, after my MBA, was in the telco. So I started with Telenor. So I was employee number 5. So I joined, so Irfan Wahab, the current CEO, is employee number 1. So I was one of the early ones. I actually almost joined more or less in the same month with him. So I learned a lot from Telenor. I mean, I really envy the kind of culture that they offered and all. But then I realized after spending almost 7, 8 years that I don't have a good hand of numbers. So I'm not really exposed to numbers, right? So I got a very good opportunity with China Mobile at a much higher position, and I had a direct revenue responsibility. So I think it was again a very kind of a well-informed decision that from product development role in Telenor, which was kind of a techno-commercial kind of, but still no revenue exposure, so to speak, right? So China Mobile gave me a great opportunity. I stayed. It was a small stint for short stint for a year and a half. But then I was getting few opportunities abroad also, so I picked up because global exposure. I mean, it was my one of my kind of thing which was also kind of lacking in my profile. So Qualcomm actually offered me a country manager position. It was more of a business development role. So in terms of my exposure within telecom, it's mobile devices, product development, value-added services, uh, 4G pricing, with revenue responsibility. And now I actually ended up with fiber to the home company, which is Transworld. So I've been blessed in one sense that all these kind of movements have been to an area where I'm actually getting exposure, which is much more incremental. Because fiber to the home is again FTTH is all booming in the sense that it's all internet at the end of the day, right? So the company is doing well, alhamdulillah. So it's been almost more than 2 years for me here, ever since I came back to Pakistan. But I realize I can, it's flourishing, it's doing great. It's in infancy as we speak, but a great potential. So when I joined back Telenor back in those days, I mean, Telenor was again a new startup, new Norwegian company in Pakistan, new area. So telco was again kind of booming. So I would say I have been very blessed, alhamdulillah, that all these switches and movement that I've done are very relevant to the market. So yeah, there I am.
Absolutely. Taimur, it is an inspiring journey to say the least. However, we know that you've seen the telco side of the market, you've seen technology, you've seen mobile devices as well, you've seen fiber optics now and the internet
Yeah.
as we speak.
Yeah.
So it's all about connectivity. You've also seen a whole transition that Pakistan has made from where we were back in the 90s, so to speak, and now. How do you see technology affecting our lives? How has it made our lives any different?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. So coming back to where Pakistan has how Pakistan has actually flourished in the telco space. I mean, just to flash a number to you, back in 2000, I started using my first mobile, by the way. And at that time, I remember the total base in Pakistan for mobile users was 0.3 million, 300,000. That's it, right? 2 decades ago, 3 lakh users in Pakistan. And now you have more than 170 million, right? So it's absolutely mind-blowing growth from zero point 0.3 to actually more than 170 million. So I mean, I totally agree with you. We can substantiate with numbers also. But in terms of overall how technology has evolved and how it is actually kind of affecting our everyday life, so to speak. I mean, there are like zillion examples that you and I can actually quote. But I think one thing is for sure, you have to really keep pace with it, right? Even I have a 12-year-old son, and I can tell you, he's much more tech savvy at times than me. Hello, sorry. So I'm just like saying you have to really keep pace with technology, right? Because things are really evolving. So I was discussing something this morning about IoT in one of the meetings. So I'm just picking one example, one area, right? So IoT has done wonders globally, right? So everything is now Internet of Things, right? Everything is driven. Can you hear? Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go on, Taimur.
Achha, sorry. So I thought. So IoT is one area I was discussing around the meetings this morning. So IoT has actually done wonders for everybody in our daily lives, right? So the smart homes that we talked about, all sorts of comforts that you actually come across are all, by the way, it's all IoT at the end of the day. So technology is really kind of it's so fast paced. You have to really keep pace with it. So there was a time when SMS was king, right? So for communication, it was really the major medium of communication, apart from voice call, was SMS. Now SMS is dead, really. I mean, nobody. I mean, I hardly receive any SMS apart from the bulk kind of promotion that you get, and they clutter your inbox, right? But now it's all internet. It's now data. So I mean, with few clicks, you
Right.
have everything available to you, right? So one of the example of fintech, which is again one area which I have not really worked directly, to be honest. But even in Transworld, I have a lot of exposure in the sense that all the payment channels are under me, and fintech uh, are with us, right? So fintech has actually done wonders. I can tell you, if you ask me off the cuff, the last time that I visited a bank was almost 2 years ago. A physical branch visit from my side was almost 2 years ago. So all these mobile apps that you have, it's all fintech. It's just the mobile phone itself is so handy. You have access to literally all sorts of banking details. You want to make an international remittance, because I was abroad, I used to use it. I mean, even today I have an international account. So even for any remittance, it's just the mobile. You use it for any deposits, for any request. It's all there. So I mean, everyday life has really evolved. It's just a matter of, I would say, in the past a decade or so. आप 12-13 साल पीछे चले जाएं, you didn't have WhatsApp, to be honest, right? It was all SMS.
Right.
So things have really, really kind of changed everyday life in many ways, right? And it's
Right.
it's a laundry list of.
Yeah. I was
Sorry.
going to say that, apps like WhatsApp that you mentioned, and, a lot of fintech companies as well. Now, these are known as the disruption in the market. There's a buzzword. So everything from Food Panda to, let's say, Telenor, Easy Pesa, or Pinja, Netflix, WhatsApp, they're all called disruption.
Yeah. Yeah.
What exactly does disruption mean to you?
So disruption. I mean, apart from the literal meaning, if you really, I mean, you're talking to a technologist, so I would actually say anything which has a great impact on daily life, right? Is really, it's like a paradigm shift, I would call it, right? So disruption is very, I mean, that's the right word in my view. It's a paradigm shift, right? So the example that I just quoted to you, I remember I used to have I still have those bank receipts and all those things. I used to visit so often, all sorts of deposit slips and all those things, right? But not anymore. You have those machines. You simply deposit your checks there for any
machines,
transaction you
right?
have in check. Yeah, correct. So I think, I mean, there are many examples of fintech. To be honest, even in Pakistani context, I can tell you. Okay, I mean, we are lagging in a lot of areas also, unfortunately. But fintech is one area where I would say it's a brilliant kind of disruption in the country, globally as well. But Pakistan mein State Bank has a great role to play, because banking regulation, divide mobile banking regulation, it really changed the whole landscape, right? So I remember I was in Telenor, so the yeah, so in Telenor, the C-level guy who was looking after Easy Pesa was actually got an opportunity to from Brussels, from Commonwealth, to present a case study on Easy Pesa. So it actually became a global success story.
Wow.
Apart from M-Pesa, yeah, Easy Pesa was really big. Not many people maybe knowing about it, because people take it for granted. But Easy Pesa, how it started and flourished. So disruption in nutshell, I think fintech is one of the greatest examples that I can actually think of. So anything which has a totally paradigm shift effect.
And yeah, we've seen how many people it's made financially inclusive. I mean, people who didn't even have access to their own bank accounts, they've become financially inclusive. Now,
Correct.
Taimur, it's It's interesting that you mentioned disruption, then you mentioned fintech, and one of the other areas that we've seen, not just in fintech, but is also edtech. Post pandemic, a lot of things have had to go digital. However, one thing that the pandemic showed us, especially in Pakistan, is that there's a great digital inequality, internet inequality. There's a digital divide. What I mean to say is that, uh, fine, a lot of businesses and schools went online in, let's say, Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. But some slum areas, like if you talk about, or maybe even like remote areas like Pannu and other parts of GB or southern Punjab, they still
Correct.
they don't even have access to 2G in most areas. So I mean,
Very right.
how uh, so they're left out. How can we make Pakistan more digital as a country? Because we keep hearing about this digital Pakistan vision. So I'd like to hear your take on it.
So first of all, on your comment on the internet access itself, the inequality. I was actually going through some stats. There was a report from Economist, and Pakistan, unfortunately, within this region of South Asia, is one of the is actually way below in terms of access to internet as percentage of the population, right? Even countries like Sri Lanka is much higher, by the way. It's a small country, but at the end of the day, so even within the South Asian region, we have an issue.
Okay, no, don't we? I keep hearing these figures. I was reading an article as well. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but this is
Yeah.
important. We keep hearing that Pakistan has one of the largest population that uses mobile phones. So we are connected, right? Or is this just, um, you know, figures where,
Yeah.
we
So
don't have.
you're right, but when you actually so one thing is for sure, right? So when they say internet access, they do include gadgets like mobile. But just remember one thing: mobile has one issue. There's an angle of mobility, right? So when they, by definition, they mean actually internet to access at their doorstep. So a lot of times these poor guys have the mobile, but they actually literally go to the workplace and they have access to internet, but not at their doorstep where they live. So when you go to rural areas, you don't have the blanket coverage for internet, right? So the mobility angle is there. So thanks to mobile, so they just move around and they have access to internet, but not at their doorstep. So that's what the access issue is, unfortunately. So yeah. So how
So
coming
how
back
can
to
we
your question?
resolve this, and how can we make?
Sorry.
I said, how can we resolve this and make Pakistan more digital?
Yeah. So coming back to your question, so digitalization. I mean, there are a lot of angles to it, right? So सबसे पहली जो opportunity है ना, so Pakistan, I would just start with that. So you have the world's biggest biometric database, and in terms of overall information available with them, the population is Nadra, right? So think about very basic stuff in it, right? So I have this CNIC, you have your CNIC also. It has a chip card, right? Unfortunately, that chip card is not enabled, right? It's just a chip card, just a flash value. So you have a CNIC which is not enabled. So the basics हैं, unfortunately, they're not fixed, right? So the thing is कि जो basic चीजें हैं उनको they're like building blocks, right? So starting from your national ID card, it should be ideally integrated wherever you go. This card should actually be your identity, a digital signature for everything, right? All sorts of access you should, but unfortunately, it is operating in silo. It's just a card. It's not integrated anywhere. You have the record maintained with another, but unfortunately, it doesn't really. So we should literally start with this identity card in terms of digitalization. It should be actually usable. I mean, just to give you an idea, I used to be in Emirates, so the Emirates ID was good enough for me to enter UAE as opposed to a passport. I never actually opened my passport. So Emirates ID would actually give me access to the country. Unfortunately, my Pakistan वापस आता था, and I used to actually have that passport or उसपे वो stamps लगाते थे to enter the country, right? So ideally, this ID card should be kind of swiped at immigration, should be swiped as a toll also. You can actually top it up, to be honest. I remember when Tanya was here, she's a good friend. I asked her that आप travel करें on GT road, unfortunately, so you are actually paying cash, right? Receipts. Why is it not possible that you top up your CNIC? It should be like it's a unique identity, right? You should simply flash it and the toll should open. So this ID card itself, I mean, agar aap basic building block ki baat kare, you start from there and you'll be surprised that you have so many places where this should be readily usable as an identity of yours, right? So start from that. Very basics, because Angrezi to bahut log bol lete hain. So all sorts of, I mean, jargon is there. But start from CNIC and it is just your identity. Other than that, internet pe main bahut focus karna chahta hu. So internet access actually is one thing which in times to come is going to really has already started hurting us. Because access ki main aapko baat kar raha tha, jahan access hai bhi, to unfortunately I belong to this industry, but the quality of internet access is also an issue, right? So I think every player in the ecosystem, unfortunately, they're in their humble capacity, they're adding value, but all of them have to really put their kind of brains together and give quality access of internet in this country. Because there's so much that internet actually gives you. It's like it really empowers you. I mean, from housewives at home to children actually attending online to us actually talking. So internet is everywhere, information access. So CNIC ki main baat ki, that's an identity. But the second point in terms of overall kind of me, which is of importance, is the internet access. Because the ocean of information which is available, but people are deprived. They don't have a quality access and they don't get. So I think fix the basics is my message in terms of right. And there are like few other items that I have in my mind, but fix the basic for digitalization.
Right, absolutely. Taimur, one of the things that I've always noticed about your personality in particular, whenever we've spoken, is that you're very self-driven and motivated and inspired. Now, despite of all the issues around us, what is it that inspires you? What inspired you to come back to Pakistan? What inspires you to go to office every day? What inspires you to be able to make changes?
So inspiration for me, to be honest, is something which generally speaking, I can tell you, मैं कोई अच्छी किताब पढ़ के ज़्यादा इंस्पायर एट टाइम्स नहीं होता, एट टाइम्स कोई फ्लैशी चीज़ देख के इंस्पायर नहीं होता मेरे. लेकिन the individuals, and Allah has been kind, the individuals that I actually came across in my life, they have been really inspiring, right? Starting from my father and a few other examples that I can share. But अगर आप मुझसे वैसे पूछें तो स्पोर्ट्स में बहुत लोग हैं. So inspiration ऐसी एक चीज़ होती. So I mean, it just आप मुझसे question किया, it just came to my mind. And this is since childhood, by the way. So Jahangir Khan ke bare mein, a lot of people know that he's an inspiring personality and he's done great British Open titles jeete hain aur kya kiya hai. But one aspect about him as a sportsman, jo ki kisi sport mein kisi ne achieve nahi kiya, which I'm not sure if you know about it. For 5 years, he was unbeaten. From 1981 to 1986, not even a single match that he actually lost. 555 winning streaks, right? In a stretch, he did not even lose for once in 5 years. So this is absolutely, I mean, inspiring. So individuals, to be honest, I can tell you, and there are a few other examples. I used to have this technician as my batchmate in LUMS. PIA ka technician tha from Interior Sindh from Sangar. He ended up actually doing MBA, and he flunked after first year. He came back and he did his MBA from LUMS. Or I was talking to him recently. Ab drive dekhe inspiration kya hai Kamal. He did his master's program from MIT, from Sloan.
Wow.
Later on, और वो एक Boston में एक research की company उसका CEO है. So from Sangar, from Sangar to Boston, from MIT, LUMS, degrees to apni jagah, but look at his kind of glorified ambition that he had. So that's the kind of inspiration you get. Or maybe I was actually delivering this small talk within my organization, where pep talk it was a lecture on motivation. So I actually quoted this particular example. So unbelievable inspiration milti hai, aur these are like constant reinforcements in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, this is
which is real. Yeah, which is real, a living example.
Absolutely, Taimur. I mean, phenomenal. Both the stories, and with Jahangir Khan in particular, I know him. I play squash, and what a win for Pakistan. What an inspiring personality. And yes, definitely. I mean, even as a businessman, for those of you who don't know, he's excelled. I mean, be it look at Chunky Monkey and the whole Tolman phenomena. I
Correct.
mean, he's done wonderfully for himself.
Right.
Um, so, talking about inspiration, we know that a lot of there's this whole boom in startups these days, right? And even like small
Right.
businesses that are coming in, and they seem very self-driven as well. But a lot of businesses are failing. What do you
Hmm.
think that is the reason why most businesses in Pakistan fail, and especially at an early stage?
Yeah. So I think there are like few examples also that comes to my mind. So I think I will substantiate with that. So there was this company called Instaphone within the telecom space, right? Long time ago. So they were the pioneers in actually launching in early days when it was infancy for telco. So they launched in Pakistan the prepaid concept, pay as you go, right? So they were the pioneers. And within few months, I think, so, yeah, 8-10 महीने के बाद literally it just faded away, and nobody knew that they were the pioneers actually for prepaid. Pakistan is a prepaid market, right? So
Yeah,
98% mobile subscriptions are all prepaid. Postpaid बहुत छोटा है. So Insta One उसका product का नाम था. It was actually a pioneer product. Right? And absolutely, everybody was awed. It was mind blowing, but they faded away within no time. They were history, right? So in my view, I mean, in my humble view, I've been attending few forums at NSTP and elsewhere also for startups. So many actually have actually realized, I followed few, I realized that सबसे जो basic which is missing is that they start with a team which doesn't have domain experts, unfortunately. So they start with people who are generalists, who have great idea with them. They want to do something disruptive, something interesting, but उनकी skill development या आप समझ लें overall ability to kind of take it to next level is missing. So वो generalist होते हैं, they are not domain experts. So that is lacking सबसे पहले. So जहाँ भी आप देखेंगे the startups who've actually flourished are the ones having the best teams, right? So Kareem and Uber का आप example देखें. So I've actually been following Kareem very closely because I was in the Middle East. So वहाँ पे भी बहुत ज़्यादा so they ended up actually getting acquired by Uber, and start तो वहीं से हुआ था Middle East से. So उसमें भी it was just a bunch of initial two people actually who did wonders, and then they kind of the way they built the whole team. So I think the missing part, in my view, as you asked me, is actually the human resource, the human capital which starts the initiative. So having flashy ideas is great, but you need to have the right kind of mindset and the right people with you as a team, which is missing. And then obviously
right.
the focus, the
Absolutely.
mandate, yeah.
Yeah. So, one thing that we keep hearing is that data is the new oil and gold, right? And um, say businesses in Pakistan are slowly realizing the impact that data can make. Can you elaborate a little more for the audience how data can have an impact on the growth of a business?
Yeah, that's a very, I think, I can have a long answer, I can have a short answer. I'm just like thinking of how to put it, but I will actually make it very precise.
Yes, please.
And I will try to substantiate it with one example, right? So in my current setting, in my current role, this role requires a lot of data and a lot of insights, right? So when I joined 2 years ago, to be honest, we didn't have much in terms of access to data, right? I am responsible for sales, marketing function, customer service function, right? Strategy function, pricing function. So I'm looking after the B2C, the consumer business. So हम जब इधर आए तो 2 एक साल पहले तो मैंने और मेरी टीम ने देखा जी कि यहाँ पे डेटा की access we don't have much. Over a period of 2 years, I was actually attending few meetings this week, and it's mind blowing what data does for you, right? So हमारा एक छोटा सा issue आया हुआ था, and we wanted to actually see, we were running diagnostics, right? So we ended up actually doing few meetings, internal meetings की, and we were just literally banging our heads against the wall. We're unable to resolve this issue, right? So we ended up then telling our IT guys that we need to extract some some reports, and we developed some few reports. We were able to slice and dice, and not as luck would have it, it's just I think it was an approach that we wanted to rely more on the data. Interestingly, we were within a week's time, we were able to identify a very pertinent issue with the help of data to a level that we actually even decided we need to change our pricing strategy, because the data was really telling us something really, really interesting. Or the whole story is it was all data driven, right?
Right.
So the importance
So
of data
ये
है कि आप जितनी मर्जी meetings कर जाएं, जितनी intellectual discussions कर दें, at the end of the day, numbers and the data would really, really tell you the real direction. Or FMCG companies, I can tell you, consumer good companies जो हैं, they're driven by data to a level के research, market research अगर बता दे कि ये product जो है, it's not good for the target audience, they would never launch it. So all the Unilevers and the Nestle's and the P&Gs of this world, they're really, really, the research departments have a lot of influence and nuisance within the organization. That all product launches are happening with the nod of data. So data mein, I think end-to-end business mein, consumer sector kar lein, telco kar lein, everywhere you go, it's all data driven. So mere role mein agar I can tell you, we eat and sleep data, to be honest. Everything we do is all driven by data. So for businesses, it's all data at the end of the day.
Absolutely. No, you really made a very pertinent point with regards to data. And I really hope and pray that more and more people realize the value of it, that the impact that it can have on businesses. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of today's session. But, I'd like to ask you two quick questions. Because we've learned so much today, Taimur, and I feel like it would be an injustice to the audience if I let you go without asking you. Number one, what are the 5 things that come to your mind, or the 5 areas where you feel like we as a nation or Pakistan as a country are lagging behind from the rest of the world and we could use some improvement?
Yeah, so let me put it in some sequence maybe. So first of all, मैं तो बहुत firm believer हूँ. So it all actually starts with the individuals, right? So as workforce, your human capital that you have in the country, उसकी capacity building कैसी हुई है? So since I've worked abroad, I can actually draw some parallels also. So in terms of nothing against anybody within the country, unfortunately, there is a level of professionalism. But overall, the capacity building is grooming, is skill development का concept है within the country. Unfortunately, we're lagging. So हम किसी role में आ जाते हैं and we actually have certain degrees. We just stick with those, and we do not really make an intentional effort to really upgrade ourselves. So unfortunately, I've never seen, or it runs across all tiers within the cultural setting that we have, whether वो student है, whether वो कोई corporate में है, in any role that you are in as part of the workforce, do not really groom yourself or really build your own capacities, right? So ability to learn, जो है ना, वो unfortunately थोड़ी सी we're lacking, I would say. So which really needs to be registered and established, and people need to develop their skill set, and it's an evolution period, right? So we are all learning. हर वक्त आपको learn करते हैं, बच्चे से कोई नई चीज सीखते हैं, to be honest. So, but anyway, so it's an evolving process, and we must, as a nation, should try to stick it. So, आप देखेंगे another litmus test for it. You go to any library, unfortunately, you will not find anyone. This is very sad, right?
Right.
So this is one. I think so. That's how it starts. And in sequence, I would say it's the skill development. So as a nation, हमने अगर productive nation बनना है, so grooming or skill development. Second, कल्चरल सेटिंग में अगर आप कहें, स्कूल्स की बात करें, यूनिवर्सिटीज की बात करें, कॉलेजेस हैं, एकेडेमिया, ऑफिसेस की बात करें, सो द लर्निंग is never conducive to conducive नहीं होती है कोई नई चीज सीखने की. So skill development तो एक individual के aspect है, but even these platforms, so to speak, schools को जाते हैं, सब कुछ जाते हैं, हमारे बच्चे भी जा रहे हैं all that, but unfortunately they don't learn. They just like memorize things and all that, right? So I've actually seen there's a lot of degradation, or बहुत unfortunately it is on a downward path, right? So मुझे ऐसे लगता है हमारी general knowledge was better than my son and my daughter, because they're more into techie stuff, और internet access है उनके पास, सब कुछ है, but if you ask them, मतलब even as a 10-year-old, I could tell you, I remember, कि who is the Bhutan's king, right? So मेरी general knowledge उस जमाने में हम ऐसी चीजें पढ़ते रहते थे, but कोई conducive environment ही नहीं है unfortunately हमारे मुल्क में, in academia, even in offices also. So that's the second point that comes to my mind, again linked with the first one, skill development. अगर आप very pertinent issues में, अगर आप, since you're talking to me, तो मैं from as a technology perspective से देखूं तो अब बहुत सी चीजें जो होती हैं, we are living in a consumer world, right? So payments drive a lot of activities around us. So everything that we buy, it's payments driven, right? So we purchase and all that. Unfortunately, if you see Pakistan and compare it with the rest of the world, so हम payments domain के अंदर we're really lacking in terms of the opportunity available with us to make in payment, which are still very low. So cash is still king in Pakistan, sadly. ठीक है ना?
Right.
So
we're a cash.
So unfortunately, cash is king in Pakistan, which is not good because उसकी vulnerability भी है, security angles भी हैं, plus multiple channels available नहीं. So payment is another major area which is lacking. PayPal नहीं है, for instance, Pakistan.
Right.
Right. So people say this. अच्छा, दो और चीजें मेरे ज़हन में आती हैं. So I was working for Qualcomm. So Qualcomm used to have $5 billion worth का R&D का budget every year in San Diego. Right.
Absolutely.
So that's a first world, that's US company, they could afford it, so that's different. But I was reading one stat, में एक report पढ़ रहा था State Bank की, so उसमें budget से related था, तो unfortunately R&D came to my mind because research is something that I really believe in, and research has to really drive a lot of things. So R&D का percentage to our GDP, I mean, it's unfortunate, it's 0.63% of your GDP is spent on research and development in Pakistan. Exactly. And the best that we had was actually back in 2007. So we're going low. So R&D spend is absolutely nothing in the country. So आप कोई नई innovation नहीं कर रहे हैं, कोई नई चीज नहीं बना रहे हैं, you're just like importing and just copying, and कोई improvisation नहीं है, कोई creativity नहीं है. It's because the spend is not there, right? So R&D is one thing, and we are lacking big time with the rest of the world. The last thing, fifth, because okay, so the five things. Fifth, if you ask me, again, is internet. इसलिए क्योंकि internet gives you access to. तो मैंने जिस तरह पहले बात की थी, we are ranked 90th out of 120 countries. एक data set में देख रहा था internet access का. So we were way below in terms of access to internet at the doorstep, unfortunately. So these are like 4 or 5 areas. I mean, it's not I think it is a dire state.
No,
dire
you
situation.
outlined them very well.
Yeah, so it's a dire situation, but it's just a matter of kind of.
It almost seems like, you know.
Yeah.
Right. I said it almost seems like you know, good roadmap to a more progressive Pakistan. Because at the end of the day, whenever we think about progression, your people think it's more to do with your norms and values and culture. But I believe that if we look into all of these 5 things into consideration and we invest our resources in them, we'll see unprecedented heights that Pakistan will be able to reach. Thank you very much for your time. Lastly, in a very short, concise response, I'd like to ask you, what has the utility of forums like CxO Global been to you?
So I think, thank you very much for this opportunity, first of all. But yeah, these forums are, I think, very good in one sense that I've been following the interviews that you've been doing, to be honest. So the kind of diversity you bring at this platform, I think that's great, because you get to actually hear from very diverse kind of group of people. And diversity is not just because of their backgrounds, diversity in terms of their perspective also. Right? So I think these platforms really serves you well in terms of bringing new perspectives, and you learn new things from different perspectives from this platform.
Thank
So
you,
thank you very
Taimur.
much.
Thank you. And thank you for always having a forthcoming attitude and having a generous heart and mind towards contributing knowledge. You are one of the greatest contributors to the knowledge economy that I know of in Pakistan.
Very kind.
Efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching, and keep us updated with your comments and feedback. If you want to learn more about the kind of work that Taimur Nawaz does, we've shared some links in the description below. Stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you very much.